This is a production of Cornell University.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Welcome, friends and family. Thank you all for coming out and joining us today for the 2017 Cornell MFA graduation reading. Please take a moment before the reading begins to silence your phones and electronic devices while you are with us, so these fabulous writers can better and more smoothly read us their work. There will be a reception in the English Lounge following this reading, in which all are invited to continue to celebrate these writers whose work we will be hearing and honoring today. But to kick things off, some thanks are in order. These thanks will by no means be all-inclusive, but to be fair, I do only have a minute or so to introduce this event, so. First, thanks to those whose donations and generosity make our time here possible: the late Philip Friend, David L. Pickett, who funds the second summer thesis fellowship and makes it possible for us to finalize the work we do here; Dave and Barbara Zelaznik, who make possible the poetry and fiction readings; the English staff and administration who make possible, well, everything else: Kara, Lynn, Corinne, Sarah, Vicky, and Michelle, who is retiring this year; the Epic magazine, and particularly Michael Cook, whose time and generosity extend far beyond making sure we are never without lunch, but also notably in compasses, making sure we are never without lunch. The fiction faculty, J. Robert Lennon, Ernesto Giannone, Stephanie Vaughn, and Elena Viramontes; the poetry faculty, Alice Fulton, Aishan Hutchinson, Joni Mikowski, and my own chair, Lyra Van Cleef-Stefanen. Our time here would not be what it is without you all, nor would workshops be what they are without the current first years. And of course, we cannot forget our current third and fourth years, who have also shaped our community here into what it is. Thank you to you all. And now, to the writers we'll be honoring today: Annie, Cary, Michael, Chris, Rocio, Mario, Shane, Leo. I raise several glasses to you and your accomplishments. And even though I haven't read all of your work, I'm looking at you fiction writers, I think I can confidently say that your work is necessary and vital just by extent of knowing you as people. Thank you for that work. Thank you for all of your varying degrees of funniness, kindness, and your dedication to your craft. I'm honored to be reading alongside of you all today. Our first reader will be fiction writer Rocio Anika. Rocio is a native of Southern California. Her thesis is an intertextual road trip novel about a Chicanx and the Spanish missions of the West Coast. She has been published in Driftwood Press, Acentos Review, and Woven Tale Press, with fiction forthcoming in Review, Literature and Arts of the Americas, and Chiriku Journal. Her alter ego's satirical column, The Bias Cut, can be found at Ohio Edit. Awards include Juxtapose Magazine's 2016 Short Fiction Contest. Find her at rocioanika.com. And she told me to stick to this bio, but I also just wanted to say that Rocio is also an amazing person, an amazing friend. I'm lucky to have read what writing of hers I have read, and I feel immensely lucky to know her person. Please give it up for Rocio.
Thank you, Jasmine. Oh my God. 4 semesters go by so fast. Feels like just yesterday we were doing the first year reading, and I was such an anxious, sweaty, nervous mess. I think I whispered the whole thing. And John Robert Lennon was so kind to tell me that it was charming. It was not charming. So much has happened in the last 2 years, and I'm just so grateful. I mean, I'm standing up here with so much gratitude, and I want to, on top of Jasmine's thanks, personally, to thank the department and to thank my mentors for allowing me to be a part of Cornell's illustrious literature journey. Another thank you I really think that we have to do is thanks to the admins, Karen and Lynn and Sarah, and everyone at EPIC. Thank you so much. So I'm going to be reading a couple of short pieces. This one is called Feelings We Don't Have Words For in American Yet. There was that one time when Dad took time out of his Sunday to drive me and my little brother to that Latino book fair in San Bernardino. He'd kept his promise, and it made me happy, but I mused on the fact that it was never a problem to get him to deliver his promises. It was just that we never made any. We drove past dirt fields and feeble-looking buildings, and when we arrived, we were handed plastic bags decorated with Edward James Olmos's face. The bags were filled with brochures detailing his foundation's mission of spreading literacy. We stayed for hours sorting through books in Spanish, crafts of stained glass and feathers, and bright paint on baked clay. At one of the many overflowing shelves, my dad found his favorite novel, Pedro Páramo. It reminded him of his school days back in Mexico. He bought it for me. He also bought 2 Neruda collections to be read in Spanish, to be read the way he wrote them. I recall holding the books like priceless treasures in my small hands, mainly because Dad never mentioned books he had read as a kid. Dad never talked about the past at all. I made a promise to myself that I'd take them with me everywhere I went, no matter where I went in life. Later, we befriended a friendly, soft-spoken cartoonist. The quiet man was decorating paper doorknob hangers with a black Sharpie when we arrived at his booth. Dad watched as Alcaraz used his Sharpie to draw us. Dave was smiling, and I was smiling too, sheepish with puberty. I liked Dave's hanger the most. His pale little boy face was already thinning out, but Alcaraz had just captured on a piece of white paper what was left of my brother's softness forever. When I bought a tall candle with a sticker on its blue glass that read "The struggle for indigenous rights has not ended," Dad said my $8 would be spent on bullets. My mind registered an image of high, foggy mountains, of a deep green, and faceless people carrying the dead weight of other faceless people. I didn't know what to do with my candle anymore. Dave bought a children's book written for 6-year-olds titled Dave No, but it was okay that he wasn't 6 years old anymore. I fell in love with an Aztec calendar, or maybe it was Mayan. There was no way for me to know in those days. There were girls in folklorico skirts dancing with boys in cowboy hats. Men in snakeskin played instruments. I asked Dad why these kinds of things didn't come around more often, but the only answer I got was another promise that would come back next year. We stayed until the booth keepers started shuttering up, and we could find no more brochures, no more bookmarks to stuff into our plastic bags. I remember how hard we were laughing when we walked back to our car, laughing and for once speaking in Spanish. When we pulled out of the parking lot, we saw a group of other brown-skinned people. They were across the street, holding banners. Their shirts and signs read, "Edward James Olmos is a racist, full of self-hatred, and Eurocentric sellouts, and no somos Latinos, no somos Hispanos." We drove past them, and they started chanting and shouting and raising their signs. Dad looked past them and said nothing, and it was almost like they weren't there at all, except that I couldn't help it. Trying to keep it all out of the corner of my eye, I couldn't avoid them, their words I mean. Ethnicide, Mexica, Anawa, Nawa mestizo myths. As an adult, when I would learn how anger is a substitute emotion and silence a coping mechanism, I would recall that moment. How I never got to ask my dad, what hurts? What hurts, I didn't ask that day. We were quiet the whole way home. This next piece is called Where Words. This is about ghosts. Not the real kind, but the kind you make up when you have nothing you can talk about. The real kind are also fake, but that's useless in my family. If we were to say to each other, ghosts aren't real, then we'd have to talk about how my Mexican dad hates women, how there is never money in the bank, and how my Mexican-American brother also hates women in a family made full by women who work. I tried to write a novel about it once, but everyone who read the first 3 pages wondered why the ghosts were talking to each other. They wanted scenes full of real people, drama, cathartic conflict, and passionate dialogue. I said to myself, but my family doesn't have those things. We just have fake ghosts. Our ghosts are a surface that we throw our downward language at. Our ghosts are cracked mirrors still hanging on the walls. We know their surfaces will deflect the grave nature of what we mean and don't want to mean, and then turn it back into something we can work with. What I mean is like how when Tia Julia snuck out of the house to get an abortion, the next day, everyone was sharing their feelings about the poltergeist haunting her window. They had heard it that night. Tia Julia had said, yes, it's really there, and I'm very afraid. When I said I didn't want to have children and that I would never marry, and my premonition came true, my apartment became very haunted. I was not somebody to make angry. This made conversations on Mother's Day and Thanksgiving easier. Then there was a time my tío stole my other tío's wife. The two headed to Canada like thieves during a witching hour, leaving a total of 8 very related children behind for someone else to deal with. It was clear that whatever demon had possessed both of them had choked their souls, leading them so far astray that it dragged them across the wrong border. Que Dios los bendiga, we said. When abuelo had abuela stripped naked, struggling to hold her down as he sprinkled bleach on her labia after he'd heard some rumors, there was a phantom living in the hallway for a very long time. It kept my tias in their room and my tios in another room for a very long time. Ghosts are important and useful. I hate that I failed our ghosts. I threw the novel in the trash. Hate is a strong word. What I meant was fear. But by the time the word has reached your brain, the page in your hands will have functioned like a ping pong table or that mirror I was talking about before. And from it will have sprung something else. Because here's a good thing to know. When you use strong words to distract, when your mouth creates shift-shaped sounds, anything can reflect. Anything may shoot upward to haunt the idea of itself, like any good ghost. A serious thing I have never admitted to anyone is that I have a very acute death wish, just so that I can have a real conversation with my family, even if it's in the afterlife, because I hate that I cannot have one now. I hate that. Which is why I suppose I'm here, talking to you, dear reader. I try not to hate that you're a phantom holding a mirror to another mirror in my cavernous rainbow mind. Thank you. Thank you. The next reader, Annie Goold, would like you to know she hopes you'll like her poems, but understands taste is a subjective matter, so no pressure. She thinks it's a pity about the rain today, yet wonders if there are much finer circumstances for a lit reading than days like this. Grateful past measure and a little out of sorts, realizing how brief 2 years can be. Annie Goold.
Let's see if we can adjust this. Okay. Hi, guys. I'm Annie, and I want to echo what Jasmine and Rocio have shared today about the gratitude, and I'm extraordinarily grateful for this crew over here. I didn't ask for friends, but I got them anyways, so. Yeah, let's get this going. This first poem is from an eclogue series that I've been doing lately. It is called Advent. A broken egg of apricot nectar modeling mauve cirrus, rousing a flush to the preposterous ledges of winter dunes. Achromatic wind runnels, the same that turvied with ferality the fallow corn stalks and bean reeds the night prior, pacified, waiting the up. Gabardine sward, thousands of spent matchsticks peeping between calcium hairs. Parallel, ditches let shard their ice caps, breaking their bridges to the regiments. Taking a turn to the east, the trenchant grain elevator amuses itself with a complimentary palette before being done with day's light, trying out its green epidermis with orpiment, copper beech, sumac, tungsten. Second passenger, a humor, lances itself, proceeding with the deepening wheel ruts, their minced limestones gesticulating preferred conduct. Maybe it's due procedure, this companion letting, that which gathers can pour. Decisively not an omen, the roads only slick at the mouths of the driveways. Mark the bare dogwood and as high holly, slipping to profile silhouettes in their jockey for the front door. The egg has clotted in a house-shaped shuck. All right, this one's called A Leavening. The ladies bloomed in ferment, clearer hips cutting through their dun habits, enough dug down to fit a human head on either side. I was checking an extra 3 times a day to be sure none of us went missing. Something about watched pots, and Tammy tried too hard in letting a new one out. Furious velveteen lips knuckling red water wraps off a paper-flat lamb. She, the eldest, had done this before, knew her way around attending a thing she'd made. She turned to lick another angle. Byzantine blood ball, a vital round hung from her. Pulsing knit pills of its casing held out in offer atop her udder. And down will come baby, cradle and all. The vet had Dad pin tea against the wall while he, in dental gloves, peeled the splat organ off her legs, dredging with iodine parts struck with straw, shit, piss, and limb. Taking to jellied fists, the vet reverting the dough of the open womb back between her hips. Elbow deep, kneading to a twisted suck snap, breaking a seal in the canal and letting him loose, keeping her innards in her. Like a cornea secured from stroke-broken muscles, she was stitched shut, one raw bead alit her bruising, latticed labium. She, composed, finished eating baby traces, medicinal dye behind her. In equal self-possession, our rush to attend to Tammy happened and walked itself out. The lamb was stillborn anyway. Upper. This next one's called Dejection, an ode. A man I like to listen to is laughing, giving me a handhold beyond my steering wheel. Wintered, the hills float back on the blue dust of branches, hemming this hose of road so abruptly traversable. Were it not for dog snores turning my face from front, I'd believe the world a thing distant to this, the split-sight glaciers sprinting to my lee. To see you now, friend. I apologize for my animal of then. How do you enter a pool? Do you mind if you're seen? I used to. Mind, that is. Now it's about the water and not making a move unearned. I wait for the waves I make to smooth back before dipping down further. Any breath held under soon blazes for breath above, so I tend to leave my mouth for last. Are you at home in the city? The one we considered on night ceilings, cars and cars away? It was for me. Deer and bloat by the median. Another protracted groan and repositioning, another titter at his own joke. I should get back to what I'm doing. I've got parents to see. Speaking of parents, this one's for my mom. Okay. Nancy Yellow. Mama's anchor zest, a poached pulse of English folk charms. George Bailey, I'll love you till the day I die, made pigment. But just as easily, heed your motion in insectese. A sip of citrus aid. One more. Okay, last one. Sure, the lighter the urine, the better the bud, but it's nice knowing there's work left to do. I'm trying not to talk about daffodils. Of course, she would clip herself the bolder trumpets, weighting their opal vase with clear cat's eye marbles, bugle corps playing in a back-to-back bundle. A highlight to the sharp spring signals was her milled wonder, buttered grits with an extra nest of cheddar, the piquant shreds seeding from bowlful heat. Healthy is a relative term, but her opus drew out the Lazarus loads of my winters, steeping them with map light, warping to a milder clay. Who knew a kaleidoscope of tallow filigree could surge an inside star? And last one. It's called Ars Poetica. I don't know if it'll stay that way, but here we go. Ars Poetica. Let me be the lifeguard, diving to the swimmer resolves to drown in undertow. Let me be that swimmer, once done piercing for the known, giving blue the reins to her adrenal streets. Let me dive in color and save myself below. Sound, sight, and comment, data and rapture. Mine might be Cole's certainty, rupture, dissolve. But it doesn't have to be a thing of threes and twos. The one experiment, divining rod. We shattered buoyant, we drinkable pulp of ruined shyness. If hold tight enough, will absorb the all of in. Kill if need be. Okay. Thanks, guys. This next reader, his name happens to be Chris Berardino. He's currently a dual PhD MFA candidate here at Cornell University. He was born and raised in Orange County, California, and received a bachelor's degree in English literature from UC Berkeley. He is currently working on his dissertation tracing the influence of ethnic and proletariat art on American modernism. Probably not super easy to do that. Chris's short story, Charlie, has been published in Cornell magazine. All right, help me welcome this guy, Chris Berardino.
Alrighty, thank you for that introduction. My thanks to the Cornell MFA department, to Elena Viramontes for countless conversations ranging from literature to activism to the impossibility of finding a decent taco in Ithaca. Thank you to my friends, to my students, to my parents for all the support. And thank you, as always, to my muse. Wherever you are in the world, you are always in my writing. With all that being said, I'd like to preface my reading with a few brief remarks. I am the grandson of Japanese internees, those that were taken from their homes with no trial, with no evidence, and stripped of their rights. Everything you are about to hear is true, even if it never happened. Gleaned from first-hand accounts, this is a fictionalized retelling of actual events about those selected for an experiment conducted in the South by the U.S. Army during the early days of World War II. This is dog bait. He wondered, as sweat rolled down his forehead into his eyes, whether the dogs could really smell the Jap in him. At least that's what the Army had told him. That's why he was here, hanging from a tree, on a forgotten island, somewhere off the Mississippi coast. Top secret, his commanding officer had told him. Don't bother writing letters. Don't bother saying goodbye. Don't say nothing to nobody. Billy hoped the dog would find him soon. He could feel the stitches in his calf begin to stretch holes in his skin. He tightened his grip and remembered the bulging obsidian eyes of the Doberman as it tore into his leg, frantically flailing and shaking its boxy head as hard as it could. Did not think dogs could hate, but as the Doberman retracted its lids somewhere deep into the back of its skull, strings of slobber wound around its nose and ears, he realized that they could. This dog hated him. Not because he was Japanese, not because he was an American soldier, but because he was his torturer. As Billy pulled his hips up to retighten his ankles, a brown and black blur tumbled out of the sagebrush thicket. Billy closed his eyes and braced, digging his fingertips into the dry, powdery bark, and braced himself for the worst. Strangely, there was no pain in his back. There was no barking. He peeked through his right eye and searched for the dog below. A young German shepherd with a shaggy coat happily panted her seashell pink tongue. "Hey," Billy called. "What you gonna do? You just gonna sit there?" The dog pulled the corners of her mouth into a funny smile and tilted its head. Billy fumbled into his waistband for the pistol he was given at the beginning of the day and shot it into the air. The dog instantly perked its ears and locked its mouth, quickly vaulting a few feet to the left. "Sorry," he said softly. "They told me I have to signal when you find me." After a few moments, the dog made its way back under the tree, itched the back of her ear, and sat patiently. "You over here, Private Nobu? Call out so I can find you. Over here." A bulky blond man with a square jaw and a square crew cut stumbled through the thicket with a leash in hand. "I see Socks found you," he said with a smile. "Yes, sir." "She hasn't attacked yet?" "No, sir. She's just been sitting there." "Shit," the man said with a quick shake of his head. "All right, come on down here, Nobu, and let's see if she goes." He walked over and slipped his fingers under the dog's collar. "Yes, sir." Billy unhooked his feet and swung down onto the sandy bank. It smelled like rotten eggs, and the buzzing mosquitoes and sand fleas were already being sucked into his mouth with each breath. "Okay, get ready," the sergeant said, "and give me the gun first so you don't shoot your dumb dick off." Billy handed over the black .45 to the sunburnt sergeant. "Ready?" the sergeant asked. Billy nodded. The sergeant released his grip and yelled, "Attack!" Socks did not move. "Attack!" the sergeant yelled again. "Go get him, attack!" The dog lazily wagged her tail and stretched her long neck up and yawned. "Let's walk her in and retrain her a little," the blonde said as he twisted the leash between his fists. Billy struggled to keep up with the sergeant as they trudged through the spiny bushes back to base. The stitches on his calf were now ripped open, and each step he took shot arrows of pain up his leg to his balls and brain. He could feel blood begin to pool at the bottom of his boot. Socks trotted up ahead, jumping over small bushes of thorns and roots, the brass hook at the end of the leash stealing crumbs of fire from the big Delta sun overhead. "Sergeant Nielsen," Billy asked, "do you think these dogs can really smell me because I'm Japanese? That there's something in my skin or blood or sweat?" Nielsen kept looking ahead, stamping his heavy combat boots down over the dead undergrowth. "I don't know. Maybe. I only do what I'm told." He sounded tired and a little annoyed. Billy decided to let it go. The men and the dog made their way back to camp, where some of the others had already returned. A few of the other Japanese privates were already sitting on the long, splintered benches, getting stitched and bandaged. The other dogs were being led back into their kennels, some congratulated, others given stern commands. Billy walked over to the bench and peeled off his pad soaked with sweat. A young doctor with eyeglasses and dog tags came over with a small white medical kit and began cleaning and stitching up the leg. "No new wounds today?" asked the medic. "Not today. This one looks like it might be getting infected." The doctor squeezed some clear solution on the wound, began to foam around the edges of separated skin. Billy grit his teeth and looked over the bay. The water had lost the youth and energy of morning and had given way to the tired, sleepy gold shadows of afternoon. "Boat is going back to the barracks in 20 minutes. 20 minutes, one of the white officers called from the doorway to the kennel. Billy hobbled on his newly bandaged leg over to the ferry dock where the rest of the Japanese guys were sitting around in stained tank tops smoking cigarettes. "Hold on," a calloused hand grabbed Billy's shoulder. "Yes, Sergeant?" "You gotta retrain that dog before you head out." "Sir, it's no use. It's got nothing to do with how I smell like. They just get mad and hateful. They ain't no use. The sergeant shoved a whip into Billy's hand and nodded over to Socks chained up on the fence. He limped over to the dog and bit his lower lip. Socks was sitting in the shade, resting her head on her muddy paws. Billy leaned forward, raised the whip, and cracked it down hard on the dog's back. There was confusion in Socks' eyes. She squeaked in pain and shifted her body weight and tried to run away, but the leash yanked her back into place. Sergeant Nielsen yelled at Billy, "Go again." Billy raised his hand and lashed the dog across the face. A small trickle of blood ran from the blaze between her eyes down the side of her snout and started to drip from the corner of her mouth. She pushed in against the fence, her brown and black fur quivering in between the patchwork of metal wire. "Go on, another." Billy felt his insides fall through some trap door, outside of his body, away from this island, away from the war. He flicked his wrist again and again and again, letting the black leather whistle through the air before it crashed with a muted, fleshy thud. In the dog's eyes, between the blows, there was only terror. She began to bleed worse from the cut. The drops of blood now stained the sand beneath her. She barked and howled between each strike, looking frantically side to side, searching for something, someone to make it stop. "Go again, Nobu, she hasn't got it." Billy felt exhausted. He could see the other men sitting at the table, quietly looking on, playing a card or striking a match. Billy raised his hand, the muscles in his fingers tight and aching, when he looked at Socks again. The blood in her mouth was now mixed with the frothy saliva, dangling from her bared white fangs. She barked uncontrollably, deep from somewhere within the bottom of her trembling body. She lunged at Billy, digging her back paws into the sand, bending the fence as she lunged forward. She began to choke herself with her collar. She coughed and snorted with each pull, her eyes like swollen amber marbles. There was only hate. Billy walked over and gave the whip to the sergeant. "Good," said Nielsen. "She'll be sure to get you tomorrow," he said with half a laugh. Billy walked off to the ferry that would take him to his bunk, losing the sound of Socks's bark amongst the others. Thank you. All right. I'd like to introduce our next reader, Kari Marcus. Kari was born in Gainesville, Florida. Her poetry has been exhibited alongside silk prints, mixed digital media, and sculptures at the Harn Museum of Art, where she was a poet in residence for 2014 and 2015. Her work can be found in the museum's inaugural poetry publication, Ink Garden. Please join me in welcoming Kari Marcus.
Hi. I'm divided between media right now, so bear with me. Thank you. I just want to extend my thanks to the faculty, especially the poetry faculty. Lyra, Aishin, Alice, and Joni have been incredibly supportive for all of us. And also the first years, Carl, Lindsay, Emily, Christina, you guys are fantastic readers and have brought so much to workshop, and it actually really, helped me along, but I know you've helped the other second years as well, so thank you so much. And of course to my cohort, who I love more than I can say in a few words. So to start, this is Coming to Almost. Semi-tragi comedy for snow. A snowflake soup already poured on other people's roofs. Our first fall mass apart, I miss the early bird, but catch a matinee. We warm each other through our respective windows. A melody so familiar replayed, several older hymns start to stir like rigid sleepers, 6 feet under, to humming several measures worth of shh up to our right. Come winter, I might stake my mind's eyes shovel roughly beneath the literature, beyond the snow, so a child vacant as a once upon a time could scoop a small mass up, inspect the bluing palm, find the playful soul of music's do, lo, re, fa, chile still plays on. You're warmed, parsing me, odd fragments of a voice. So it seems at first there's still more beauty nagging to be named and brought to life. But this blossoms into an easy late spring shrug. A good job pays you more than you pay it. This is a poem I wrote for my sister that she took really well. It's called Halifax River Confessional. I dropped your diary in the Halifax. Not what I'd call fishing there with Dad. I got to hold the pole. He reeled them in. Classic Dad. Classic lose-lose win. I don't remember why I had the thing. Probably to read. So long ago. I must have been barely 11, maybe 12, 13. You should have seen my face. I should have seen my face. Wouldn't you know it, Dad, the only one who could have seen my face, was busy adding one more tally to his victory margin. Watching the two graceful pink ballerina slippers sink somewhere deep beneath Dunlawton Bridge. I thought of several ways to tell you, none of which seemed wise. I decided not to tell you unless you asked. You never did, so surprise. On the bright side, if there is such a thing as God, I think he must have had your back. Your secrets all are safe inside the Halifax. And this is Dear Reader. Suppose I should address you in the old-fashioned way. Yours truly, benefactor broadcast in candlelight and negligee. What company would become our little two-piece lay? Accordion or harp, the wind or chime, and shall I set the metronome to a strict 15 by 5 by 10, let's say Petrarchan, or let slip, like Sargent's Madame X, the harmless inch, where the only rule is words and each should indirectly reign, could you and I respectively be coup and blank campaign? Is that all it takes? I'd like to touch you now, and again in voice alone, no skin, no violin. Yeah, you know what, that's it. Our next reader, Shane Kawalsky. A lot could be said about Shane Kawalsky.
That was a good introduction. Thank you. To save time, I'm just gonna ditto all the thanks that has been offered, but at a personal caveat of love to my family, actually, who's here out there. I love you. I'm just gonna read a few short stuff, actually, a few short things. Let's start here. This is called The Disliked Man. There's a guy, I'm not sure how to put it, but there's a guy, and he's very disliked. He doesn't know how disliked, but he's quite disliked. Daily, he eats non-spicy soups and doesn't realize the murmuring affinity the soups have for staying in their hot containers. That when spooned out and lifted to his pursed lips, the soup screams for mercy. No, no, it screams before being slurped into the hole of the disliked man's mouth. Even things you don't think can have a voice almost always have a voice. You're probably just choosing not to hear it. That's why I'm telling you the story of the disliked man. This next piece is called Denial. There's a lot of facts and figures happening right now, a lot of numbers. I've never been one to think about them. I've never been one to think too much about the outcome of any given impulse, actually. If I were a seagull, that would be preferable. I like to go about my business based on hunger mostly. Once on the boardwalk at the beach, I stole my nephew's fries, but I didn't just steal them. I ravaged the fries from his small hand with my mouth. He yelped. I enjoyed the fries very much. The ocean looked good enough to walk on that day. Sometimes I'm a very terrible person who thinks long after they act. Some people have said this makes me adorable. Other people have said this makes me painful to be around. I agree with the people who have said nothing about me. This next one, okay, yeah, let's go with this one. This owes a special debt to I read an Eskimo myth once, and it had to do with blubber, and so this is called Grief. She was an effectless girl who grew her boyfriend from a dollop of whale's blubber. Her original boyfriend had drowned in Zlik-Zip Lake. She was always better on the water than him. Instead of feeling sad, she took the blubber and rubbed it on her genitals. She rubbed it until the blubber became her boyfriend. He was softer, tenderer, less juvenile. She could rub him against her genitals and he wouldn't tire. She brought him home to meet her parents, who long ago had died and were now blubber parents. She petted Bingo, her beloved dog, Slobbery, also made of blubber, while her blubber parents asked her blubber boyfriend what his parents did for a living. Just two more, and I'll be gone. I'll be over there. This next piece is called Tender Garfield. I have a friend who's nagged by this memory of a very perverse Garfield comic strip. He says it's actually quite sexy, but incredibly perverse, but not just because it involves an anthropomorphic cat and meatloaf. He says it haunts him nightly. He's been losing sleep over it. He can see the strip clear as day in his head, but has yet to find it in real life. He doesn't even like Garfield that much and never has, so he knows it's not a thing he purely has invented. He knows he must have seen it somewhere, and when he did, he thought, gosh, that's perverse. That's perverse for a kid's comic, he thought. He tries to explain the comic strip, but he can't. He sees it clearly in his head, but he can't explain it out loud, out of his mouth. It doesn't come out. He worries that this is either because A, he has secretly invented the sexy Garfield comic strip in the fabric of his own mind, or B, he has a brain tumor and or early onset dementia. Even with these options very likely as objective realities, he adamantly denies inventing the Garfield comic strip. He says it exists. He talks about it as if it exists. I let him talk about it. I don't believe him, but I think it's a necessary part of being a friend sometimes to let them live in their delusions. I call that tenderness. And last but not least, it's called, this actually, you know what, before I read this one, last year, if I remember, I think it was Rocio's idea. It wasn't mine, it was not my idea, it was hers. Talking about like sex stories. We should all write sex stories, all of us over here, like sex poems, but nobody did it. And I think I did it, if I remember correctly, and I think this was it. So this is called A Night Walk. It was her idea. It was interesting to me what I was seeing. Night was laying itself over everything not lit by the old streetlights on that street. I had gone for a walk because sometimes that's what I do. And now the pudgy night air bulged in my face. Walking at night, you can hear the houses doing things inside. But this night was different because instead of hearing, I was seeing. Through a window from where I stopped on the side of the street, two people were performing sexuality. It's what I saw. I couldn't quite tell what genders they were. Didn't matter what genders they were. They had bodies that made the air jealous of the space they were taking up. "Hey," I shouted. They heard me and came to the window naked and said, "Hey, what's up?" "Thanks for doing what you're doing," I said. "Oh, gee," they said. "Thanks for the thanks." "You deserve it," I said. "Well, why don't you come up and join us?" they said. "Gosh," I said, "really?" "Get on up here, you big goof," they said. And that was the first time I had sex. Thank you. Thanks. This is the moment I've been waiting for like 2 years. I knew it was coming. It was coming. I was on a collision course with this moment. To introduce Michael Pryor, our next reader. Michael Pryor, he's a Japanese-Canadian writer. He's the author of the poetry collection Model Disciple. It was published last year. This didn't sound good, did it? I'm like speaking into this. So I met Michael first semester. We worked Epic together Monday mornings. It was me and Michael. And the thing I realized about Michael early on is that spontaneous hugging would happen. Yeah, he's a master of spontaneous hugging. I would think I'm alone in the room. I'm alone, there's nobody here, but then all of a sudden arms are enveloping me from behind or in front or from side to side. He's great at this. I think there's too many in the room right now, so we're all safe. He can't hug us all. But the thing I want to say about his poetry, he writes poetry, by the way, and also his heart, actually, because I think they go one and the same. They're both basically, the thing I would describe his poetry and his heart as a giant walrus. A giant walrus that has wandered very far from the ocean and ended up in, like, the prairies of Canada, I think, you know? And it doesn't know why it's there, but it's a really beautiful thing. It's a strange thing and it's a beautiful thing, and that's what I think of when I think of Michael. And before I actually ask you to, like, clap and welcome him to the stage, I do want to say, I'm looking right at you, I didn't say corgi once in this introduction. Not once. Not once. This is a corgi-less introduction for you, Michael. That's how much I care. So with that said, would you please welcome Michael Pryor.
Thank you so much, Shane. That's a true story. There was a walrus in Saskatchewan once. So thank you to Lynn for setting this up. Thank you to all the creative writing faculty, in particular the poetry faculty, Lyra, Joni, my advisors, Alice and Aishan, and I have to thank, of course, my wonderful cohort. I'm going to read a poem. It comes out of two things. Well, actually, mostly one, which is that my father sends the most fascinating text messages to me. I think he might be like a master of kind of a modern haiku in text message, and the title is true. My father's birthday is a day before mine. The last train pulses across the pane, and fireflies spark beside the tracks. Acne's red wing flames my face. I can't take back this skin. In the other room, a drugstore Timex synchronizes with the faucet strip. If I squint, the fireflies align their lives to map the summer's migraine of flowers that were weeds. You say, but I think they're just trying to survive. Cheap bulbs, they burn out in 2 weeks. The train rattles as its links shift and scrape like the dark between days. From across the continent, my father texts. Your mother hiked halfway up the hill behind the cabin, a graceful mountain goat. Is this love? Lately, I've been writing you letters that I shred about that blood orange eclipse, sleep's determined murmurs of eyelid and lash. the fireflies or sunset's ash. I realize I have no means by which to make you a present of the past, where my father once cowered behind the June sunflowers, bloodied by the dog chain his father had swung, not at his son, but at the fear of being left without one. The fireflies stutter like an apology. I would be lying to you if I didn't admit I love them. Like Chris, my grandparents were forced into an internment camp during the Second World War. This is called Self-Portrait as a Portrait of My Grandfather, December 12th, 1941. If a memory bears radiation's relationship to time, if his eyes are and are not mine, if strawberries once rotted in muddy crates on a farm unfarmed and seized, then a reborn face's parabolic features curve an axis never crossed, then salt and silver nitrate scribe light's dictation on the page of them and us, of I and him, of fear's ruinous aperture and frame, of how what's outside fades that within, or how a cold sun gathers in my eyes, my hair, my mind, like half-lives born on wind. How half alive and half asleep, each waxen pore's single seed. This is the last poem I'll read. It's a bit longer. I had things to say about this poem, but I think I'll just say it's for someone I miss a lot. In Cloud Country. In Cloud Country, water has but two states. We focus on the crease between a wave and its cold, between us and the sun. In Cloud Country, your mind settles its mist across the TV's broken screen, the IV's taped labels, the metal rungs strung along the bed frame like ladders into a hidden room. Here, Kyushu is a doorway left ajar, a nightlight shadow shift. Here, we admit ourselves the paper's ninth and impossible fold, the way we say hello, meaning hold on a little longer, or I don't know, meaning it's true. Errant cells spill like sea salt over the corridor's mirrored linoleum as we shuffle from floor to floor. And you live long enough to see your glasses return to style, your plaid shirts, your knit cardigans. Within our borders, your hair frays cirrus into sky, while that bride, so serious in every photo, never had to be you. Drowsy, draining through a plastic tube, in Cloud Country you say, that was all so long ago. Each closet a mossy gate, each wormwood cabinet a cabin dissolving in your nowhere backwoods, where the plural is story, the singular skin, and the notice stapled to the door does not make of one face many. Was there ever a quiet street, a pink bungalow, a trio of hunched maples, a cup of cooling sencha waiting in this nation for you? In Cloud Country, you say, it feels like I'm being eaten, and choke down spoonfuls of ice cream, lemon jello. We thicken your water with powdered bone. In Cloud Country, the horizon doesn't sever the sky, but spills upwards, a helix of white smoke, burnt leaves, while the fledglings in our chest bear no desire to leave the nest or rot to barbed wire, snag cloth. At this latitude, the textbooks declare the heart an uncracked robin's egg, the mind a clever mockingbird's. And every morning is the morning you showed us the bitterns curtained by bulrushes, towering in their sleep. You closed our eyes as we passed the one broken on the boulevard. It is here, in Cloud Country, that you promise to reveal how to uncrimp each beak from its paper bud, how to unfurl each wing with the perfect pressure of fingers not yet talons, veins not yet tunnels of wind and sleet. It is here that you mutter, I had a name, so that we understand every animal has wings. No dignity and indignity, you kept it all to yourself in Cloud Country, where the sheets folded you and the crinkled gown exposed you, where the swallows never stood still and never stood for want. We kept them to ourselves. We kept this for you. You plead, leave a window open, a skylight unlocked. We flatten our faces against the glass's double pane. We couldn't finish those final folds alone. You left us for an image of astounding order. There was no order. We listened to the radio for your whereabouts until we too bear throats racked by static, blistered with Coriolis. The fields that stretch behind the boulevard rise and evaporate easy from their bedrock, now no different than bed. In cloud country, it rains newspaper cranes, it cries Fujita scale. It hears your tectonic mumble merge with ours. There is no scale for now and then. You are the paper's 103rd fold, the nebula's gauzed edge. In cloud country, you say thank you. We say thank you. Thank you. So now I have the great pleasure of introducing Mario Giannone. Mario has written perhaps the most succinct bio, rivaled only by the brevity of Shane's. It reads, Mario Giannone is from New Jersey. He is a BA from Rutgers University Camden. I think this is insufficient. So I'd like to add a few things. Mario and I sometimes share work, and I can say he's an incredibly talented writer. His stories are heart-wrenching, hilarious, strange, and elegantly articulated. Mario is also an excellent impersonator of mixed martial arts fighters and movie stars from the 1990s. He gives excellent hugs. Furthermore, and this is, I think, a little unusual for a fiction writer, he reads voraciously of contemporary poetry. So bonus points. He's one of the kindest people I know. Please give a round of applause for Mario Giannone.
Michael's such a sweetie, isn't he? He likes to come into my classroom and just wave hi to me while I'm teaching. And I tell my students he's my special friend. They're so innocent, they're so confused by that. Yeah, so I'm gonna read a story. Oh, Shane told his family that he loves them, so I'm gonna tell my family that I love them too. I love you guys. All right, so I'm just going to read the first two scenes of the story because it's kind of long. It's called Heaven is a Disc Floating in the Sky. Madame Blanchette, my internet psychic, says the cause of my psychic turmoil is a poltergeist. In the past, we've tried aligning my chakras, meditation, spirit journeys, spirit crystals, acupuncture, virtual palm readings, tarot cards, and juice cleanses. But when I typed into the chat that I've been having a recurring nightmare where horses with people faces eat my arms and legs, Madame Blanchette typed back, this is death, a poltergeist. A poltergeist is a special kind of problem to have. Unlike roaches, mice, or bad roommates, you cannot eliminate them with poisons. No, a poltergeist requires an expert of the spirit world. It requires a Madame Blanchette. I ask her what I should do. I'm in a panic and keep thinking a ghost is playing with my hair. The chat says Blanchette89 is typing. The longer it takes, the more I worry. I think of ancient burial grounds, murder-suicides, demonic possessions, and meat cleaver-wielding clowns. In the other room, Tomasino shouts at a basketball game. Trust the process, he screams triumphantly. I try my best not to bring up Madame Blanchette to my brother. He teases me about her whenever I mention her. You're a regular kook, he says. But if our house is haunted, then I can't just keep it to myself. Tomasino has a right to know too. The blue light of the computer screen tugs on my retinas, Madame Blanchette types on. Despite the time it takes for her to respond, Madame Blanchette's message is short. You need to learn history of your house. See if anything bad happened, then get back to me. Then she signs off. Madame Blanchette has been my assigned internet psychic for 3 years. I started visiting e-psychic after Mom and Dad had passed away, within 2 months of one another. Not long after their deaths, I suffered from bouts of insomnia and a deep depression. I'd stare at the kitchen knives and imagine what it'd be like to cut myself open with one and place all my organs in individual freezer bags. Madame Blanchette is much cheaper than any therapist or antidepressant. For $29.99 a month, I have unlimited 24-hour access to her. I try to keep my sessions with her to 2 hours a day, 2 days a week. There's some days, though, where I seek help with an imaginary problem, fear of public bathrooms, dreams of burning at the stake, a voice in the back of my head that tells me to strangle babies. I like to think of it as preparation for the future. I keep her advice in a notebook covered with blood donor stickers. The problems may not be real now, but they could be very soon. When they come, I'll already have Madame Blanchette's advice to rely on. In the other room, Tomasino has his Sixers jersey pulled over his face as someone takes a foul shot. I've lived with my brother long enough to know that I shouldn't speak until commercials. A three-pointer from the opposing team sends him into a fit. A commercial for teeth whitening strips come on. Tomasino, I ask, do you know anything about this house? That we live here? No murders or anything like that? Why do you always have to make everything creepy, Margie? You're creepy, I say. You're a kook, he says. Is this Mrs. Blanche's idea? She thinks your shy bladder is the result of some bad juju? It's not my bladder, it's my nightmares. And it's not bad juju, it's a poltergeist. Do you know anything or not? Well, Mom used to talk about how there was a cranberry bog around here when she was growing up, the one Grandpa worked at. The game comes back on and I sit in silence. 5 minutes later, a commercial for propane grills plays. You know, Tomasino says, Mom and Dad were going to sell this house before we both dropped out. They were going to live on a boat in the Keys. It was our parents' great disappointment that neither Tomasino or I finished college. We sank their boat before it ever made it to the Keys. I was 3/4 of my way to being an elementary school teacher. Tomasino was halfway to being a journalist. You come from a long line of quitters, Dad had joked, but there was still disappointment in his voice. Now I deliver newspapers at the crack of dawn. Tomasino sells bedroom sets at a furniture outlet off the White Horse Pike. Often, when I'm delivering newspapers, I'll see school buses on their way to scoop up children. I like to imagine they're taking the children to my classroom, where I fill their heads with letters and numbers as they sit around me on a carpet shaped like America. Because Tomasino and his furniture store friends are having their bi-monthly Yahtzee night, David and I have to have sex in my minivan. Parked on the street in my fogged-up van, I feel like a teenager again. There's a sense of fear and worry added to our lovemaking. It brings me back to a time when I believed blowjobs could get you pregnant. The house booms with the sound of Tomasino and his friends yelling, Yahtzee! David wraps himself around me. He whispers in my ear, what'd you think of the movie? I couldn't tell if you liked it. I did like it, I lie. I can't even remember it. Movies are like that for me. They're here, then they're gone. Did you find your poltergeist, he asks. He's always so full of questions. He's a human job application. No, not yet. Tomasino mentioned a cranberry bog. Haunted cranberry bog. That's a new one, he says. David's best quality is he never judges me. Everything about me is beautiful. He does not mind my nail clipping collection, my inability to pronounce toilet, or my paranormal beliefs. Unlike Tomasino, there's no sarcasm in his voice when David discusses Madame Blanchette. To David, she is just as much a part of my life as he is. In return, I don't judge him either. David believes the earth is flat. And even though I've been in a plane and seen the great blue curve of the planet, I still love him. When he describes how NASA, multinational corporations, and the governments of the world are hiding the Earth's flatness, I open myself up to him so wide that I feel like my skeleton might drop out of my skin. There are worse things to believe in. He dreams of one day starting his own brewery, but for now he works as a bartender. Working with beer is one of many things that surprisingly doesn't require you to know the shape of the planet. Through a hole rubbed away in the fogged window, we watch Tomasino's friends leave. The two of us slink out of our temporary adolescence and back into the house. Tomasino sits at the kitchen table, rolling dice in his palm. David offers to play a game with him, and Tomasino rattles the dice in the cup. I think Maureen is cheating, Tomasino says. I just can't figure out how. I think she's sneaking in loaded dice. David puts a comforting hand on Tomasino's shoulder. I swear David's an empath. I keep telling him to take the online test. The boys roll their dice and shout in victory and moan in defeat. Atop the TV is a shelf of snow globes Mom and Dad collected on all their trips. Everywhere they went, they bought a snow globe and a fridge magnet. The Key West and Grand Canyon snow globes slide off the shelf and thud on the carpet. A glitter storm clouds their scenery. In the kitchen, a cabinet door falls off its hinges and breaks a glass on the counter. Shards take flight and crash land on the linoleum floor. This goddamn house is falling apart, Tomasino says. He and David turn to me. They know what I'm thinking. This is how a haunting is at first, little and hiding in plain sight. They see my expression, and I can see it too. A 1,000-yard smile stretches across my face. And that's it. To be continued. Thank you, guys. I have the unique pleasure of welcoming Leo Ríos to the stage. I wrote this whole thing for him, but I don't think it does justice. So, yeah. Man, Leo's so cool. He's got sunglasses. This is my intro. I want to be cool. Like when he walks up here, he will walk up here with such swagger. It's amazing. And I'm just like a Sasquatch walking by. Yeah. So the first time I read his work, I was just blown away. He writes like some of the most emotionally true stories of growing up and of childhood that that I've ever read. So I'm just okay with like living in his shadow, I guess. I'll be your Ashley Simpson. It'll be a cool deal. He's also an artful chef and graceful dancer as well. He just keeps getting cooler, guys. So please welcome future Pulitzer Prize winner / Iron Chef winner / Dancing with the Stars winner, Leo Ríos.
Oh, that was so funny. What a liar. Funny thing about Mario is he looks just like my brother, believe it or not, my younger brother, so it's kind of cool that he said all those things, you know. So I feel like we're brothers, but we're not. I just this morning decided what I was gonna read, and it was different than what I had been like rehearsing all week. I was like, oh. And then I decided, but then this morning I was like, no, it's something different, I'm gonna do this. So then I saved it on my computer as, I saved it as reading thing, but by the time I emailed it to myself, the title had changed to reading shit. So I guess I felt different about it, and now I'm here, and I couldn't print the thing out because Cornell, the library was filled with like mentally ill patients walking around, students, they were stressed out, and they took up all the computers, so I couldn't print it, but I have it on my phone, and now being here, though, it's just so bright. It's so bright. I'm going somewhere with this. It's so bright. So, instead of, and I'm really hungry, so I'm trying to be serious, guys. I'm trying to be serious. So the thing I was gonna read, it's about a boy, a 12-year-old boy. 12-year-old boy who's working on this weird ranch, on a strange farm ranch with animals, and there's a ram, and there's goats, and all the animals you can imagine. And at one point, he tries to pet a dog, because the dog is being a dog, but it's chained to a tree, and he gets too close, and the dog chases him, and the dog kind of nips him in the shoulder, and then I'm just gonna pick it up from there, because I need to kind of just go to sleep right now, okay? I'm gonna pick it up at the end of that scene and then just pick it up, okay? So at the end of the scene, the boy says, maybe it was the heat. Maybe the inordinate amounts of cortisol flooding my central nervous system. For whatever reason, I fainted then and there. Didn't even have a chance to say bye. When I came to, my madrina was standing over me, blotting the sun with her largeness. At first, all I could see was her presence, though I knew she was holding something wet with rubbing alcohol near my nose. I could smell it, and sometimes its rigidity pressed against my upper lip. The motherfucking sun was still oppressive, thoroughly cooking me. So I closed my eyes again, then realized how thirsty my mouth and throat were. I pushed myself up to a sitting position. My head hurt like a bitch. In front of me, I started seeing rainbows dancing on invisible networks, the contours of air itself. And I thought, damn, here we go, round 2. But then the sparkles went away, and I was left with just my headache, smelling rubbing alcohol, not knowing if it was helping or making it worse. In any case, I was awake again. You gave yourself a good fall, my madrina said. I was watching you over there from where I was. Esto vale verga, I said, feeling groggy, forgetting my usual manners. My madrina, she laughed. And from what mouth did those little words come from? She was wearing a purple bandana wrapped across her forehead. It was drenched with sweat, and her face too was slick. I myself realized, wasn't sweating. I feel bad. Forgive me, but that is why the words are coming out nakas. I'm not going to tell your uncle. Now, raise yourself. Let's see if you can. You need to eat something before you die of fright once again. And what exactly did you think to do with the pitiful vaga? The pearl dame suffered sufficiently. Nothing. I was persecuting a tarantula. It was this big, look. I wanted to trap it in a bucket, but it escaped, and that's why I crossed the line close to vaga. And then you ran, like a cockroach. She laughed again, loud, like a drunk, like the happiest grandma in the world. And what would yourself have done? It was all so absurd, the little fright I had given myself. Oh, but just look, Baga charged you, and expensive too. Your arm, it's carved up like a chicken. My forearm was covered with blood, but at least the flowing had stopped from the elbow, which is now just a dark clot, positively confirming the absence of anemia. I didn't feel pain, so I got up and followed my madrina to the trailer, where we usually had our midday meal. I had never felt so hungry, but I'm probably just exaggerating. It was my first time fainting and everything, you know? I was proud of it. That's it. It's over. Wow. Oh, man. This week isn't over, huh? It isn't over. It isn't over because we have one more reader. She's a poet, Jasmine J. She's also our MC. In our brochure, we have some information that a lot of us know. We know she's from Allentown, PA, and she'll be lecturing next year. But I know these other things, and here's my story about Jasmine. I know for a fact that last summer, Jasmine was a Callaloo Fellow in England. And I know for a fact that earlier this year, she was at DC. Maybe y'all saw her at AWP. She's everywhere. My prediction is that one day Jasmine J will be queen of this world. And that other one, that other world. For the time being, we have the pleasure of not only hearing her poetry, but having her be our MC. So I am as grateful as you all should be for Miss Jasmine J.
Well, Leo Ríos, now I feel all this pressure to be queens of other worlds and whatnot. Congratulations, you have made it to the almost end point of this reading. You all are a great audience, and thank you all so much. Thank you for being here again. Thank you again to the faculty and staff. I have a question. Do you all know about the OfferUp app? No? I'm not sure what to gauge from your silence, so I'll just tell you. The OfferUp app is a mobile-only app that basically takes the experience of eBay and Craigslist, but gives it the scrollability of Instagram. And what it does is kind of indicative in its title. You can offer up any darn thing, and you can buy any darn thing. And the other week, I was on OfferUp, not planning to buy anything, but just, seeing what's in the market. And I came across a Hank Williams Jr. doll, which I thought was funny, and I was wondering why someone would offer a Hank Williams Jr. doll for sale. Like, is there a specific market for Hank Williams Jr. dolls? And was there a specific reason that this doll cost $45? I was curious. So what I'm gonna read you now is a longer piece that's sort of a prose piece on finding a Hank Williams Jr. doll for sale online for $45. And it is called Finding a Hank Williams Jr. Doll for Sale Online for $45. Try me, the package commands in a red that's unaffected as hip-hop killing disco. It isn't that I wouldn't feel tempted to try it. It's that I'm unsure of what not to try. Say Bocephus 3 times and get TSA immunity. Press the button that boasts Born to Boogie and see Hank Williams Jr. every time I, for instance, catch my reflection in a spoon. Pinch the little hand reaching out of a carved circle in the plastic, like America beating the Russians to the interdimensional breach, and wake up to an alternate reality where Arlo Guthrie is my daddy, but Arlo Guthrie is also black, and he still sings about color folk in New Orleans as if he isn't one, but his producer also used a white dude's picture every time they market one of his albums. I would be pissed if I were this Hank Williams Jr. doll, and probably even more pissed if I owned this Hank Williams Jr. doll. This, perhaps, why Don, the user selling a collectibles doll whose box was clearly garbage at some point, is charging $45 for it. Does one do anything more when owning a plastic doll whose head is so much larger than its body that it looks more Pez dispenser than doll, than make unreasonably self-satisfied demands that are $45 large and seemingly out of spite? I did some research, and Bocephus Hank Williams Jr. dolls go for $25 at most. Don is being an asshole and taking advantage of the singularity of his medium with the classic individualism of Satan. He's like a man my mother knew who would say to her, "You ain't gonna find no better." I call that a no-swoon unit, a chin check of spiderweb and fire. My mother believed it until she didn't. What does the market of Don believe? How close is the sale of a non-minted Bocephus doll to worship? Remember when Hank Williams Jr. came out with that album called The New South in '81? The one where he had that first song, Feeling Better? Like he cried cornbread and no longer denied everyone else heaven the way he soothed himself with the promise of some faraway help? Me neither. I feel the '80s mostly as the vestigial difficulty to legally purchase weed, though occasionally I wish that Evil Dead hadn't been remade. And I did hallucinate Michael Jackson making a cameo in Dukes of Hazzard once. That was a heat stroke. It was 1989, right at the close of the Reagan years, when All My Rowdy Friends Are Coming Over Tonight became the opening tune of Monday Night Football broadcasts, fusing country and football like consumerism and I Have Needs as a Man until 2011, which, incidentally, was the year of the Ronald Reagan centennial. This centennial, commissioned by Barack Obama, by the way, birthed a collaboration album of country musicians, including Hank Williams Jr., singing America's post-9/11 praises. As you can imagine, they called the album Today, A New Beginning. But what was that new beginning other than the sun rising in Aquarius's house in 1911, and a century later, us having the song America Will Survive on our conscience? That song is the America Toy Store. You can buy freedom and fun and plowing your fields, and we say grace and we say ma'am, and we hit back, and if you don't like it, then we don't give a damn. It's better than organic produce. You can learn right from the signature bearded mouth what the sound of standing your ground, what sanctifying the body is closest to. If it isn't clear, I don't buy the doll. I listened to a couple of Hank Williams Jr. songs out of an uncanny sense of diplomacy, refuse whiskey for a while, conclude that what Ralph Ellison said about the most insidious and least understood form of segregation being that of the word means, try me, will likely plot my destruction in the margins. I let myself resemble a different sky. And years later, I am a woman who does not give in to her ambition. This woman has not mastered much. She misses flights to places she didn't need to go to. She hasn't gotten out of debt. She thinks the word ceiling sounds more like a verb than a noun. For this reason, the word ceiling makes her suspicious. She returns to a project she has been working on for a long time. She masturbates occasionally. She abandons a project she has been working on for a long time. She sleeps. She is surprised when she rides out of bed, reminding herself of the morgue, looks out of her window, and it is night. Like the last time she looked out of the window, and it was night. On the eve of her grandmother's birthday, she dreams she owns a manservant. He has the head of Thomas Jefferson, but the voice of Betty White. The next day, she scrawls the words Black feminism on her mirror in lipstick, like a reminder to never give up. She wears her skin like holding a map to a place she is already in. She says hain't when she's forgotten who it is she needed to forget. Also for sale at $45 on Don's same profile is a live action figure of Chris Kirkpatrick from the boy band NSYNC. How am I doing on time? Great, okay, all right. I'll read one more. On the sale of a live action figure of Chris Kirkpatrick of the boy band NSYNC. I don't actually care to talk about the sale of a live-action figure of Chris Kirkpatrick of the boy NSYNC. You know how some ideas are very appealing as ideas, then become very abandonable as ideas. Yes, that song about goodbyes must have felt culturally significant at the start of the millennium, but I think what has me about exits is the way they can turn presence into detritus. The experience must prepare to be discarded while lived. Austere, cynical at worst, but isn't that what is meant by giving a counter to hello? Or to always have something to give? What about more commonly when we do not address when others go? Have you ever prepared to not acknowledge a person's exit? I entered the bathroom at the same time as another brown woman. We walked into the stalls next to each other. The sound of her lunch, which was now exiting her, hit my ears swift and precise, like the recognition of failure, as I'm sure, to her, did mine. Now the future faced us with a choice we hadn't considered as we approached the sink to lather ourselves at the same time, to be gentle. We could ignore what we had in common by casting our eyes down, looking only at our reflections, or let interlocutions of I increase in the lonely language of release. Speaking of goodbyes, that's it. Thank you again, everybody, for coming out with us today. Thank you again to our donors, our staff, our faculty, my own chair, Lyrae, my sub-chair, Aishin. Thank you so much. And most importantly, thank you to the writers here. Can we have another applause for all of the people we've heard today?
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.